The most intense political crisis of our time began just 10 years ago with the break-in at the Watergate in Washington. The heart of it was the story of a man who was president, a man who had many fears, and how those fears set in motion a crisis for the nation and a tragedy for himself.
The 1970s appears to have been a new awakening for many. This was an era of reform and social progression. Women experienced the movement known as second wave feminism, where issues such as abortion rights and divorce laws took center stage. People were more actively striving toward social and civil liberties during this time, allowing for events such as the first gay pride parade, as well as a multitude of protests. This was also a decade that spawned long-lasting cultural themes.
In the 1970s, many popular blockbuster films were made, such as Star Wars, Jaws, and The Godfather. These movies were very successful and spawned a lot of sequels. In television, shows such as All in the Family began to have plot lines concerning very sensitive subjects, such as abortion, homosexuality, and race, all of which had been considered off-limits for television before. Saturday Night Live poked fun at sex and religion, two other topics that were considered inappropriate for television before the 1970s.
Disco was a dominant musical fad of the 70s and consisted of upbeat and danceable rhythms. Disco became a very popular source of inspiration across other kinds of media. However, disco was very short-lived, and people soon saw through to the wackiness and simplicity of the genre. Rock music also had a very strong following among the youth of the 70s, with bands such as the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, Grateful Dead, Led Zeppelin, and Pink.
Technology developed during the 1970s was primarily focused on the advancement of communication and information technology. In 1970, there was the development of WLAN, or Wireless LAN Network. This allowed computers to communicate wirelessly. In 1971, the personal computer, microprocessor, floppy disk, and electronic mail were all created, contributing to the distribution of information. In 1972, C programming language, GPS, the PET scanner, and MRI scanning were all invented. These are both advancements in communication as well as medical technology, which both benefited people. In 1973, the mobile phone was created by Motorola, and voicemail was as well. In 1975, Microsoft was founded, and a year later, Apple Incorporated followed in its footsteps. The 1970s in the United States was a time when communications technologies were beginning to take root and give us the widespread information we have today. The 70s art styles were characterized by earth art, the continuation of pop art, body art, and the creation of graffiti art. Earth art was promoted by artists such as Michael Heiser, Walter De Maria, Robert Smithson, James Turrell, Claes Oldenburg, and Richard Serra. Pop art was still represented by artists such as Andy Warhol, David Hockney, and George Segal. The 1970s also saw the heyday of body art, which began in the 1960s. In body art, the artist's own flesh, or the flesh of others, is the canvas. The 1970s also saw the rise of graffiti art, which was used to express underlying social and political messages.
Many fashion trends from the 60s found their way into the early part of the 70s. For example, the notorious hippie look, which consisted of tie-dyed shirts and frayed jeans. The wrap dress design in 1972 became widely popular among adult women for its ability to match a variety of sizes.
The Kent State shooting, or the Kent State Massacre, occurred on May 4, 1970. On May 1st, Kent State students began protesting the war in Vietnam, and many anti-war and anti-Nixon speeches were given, and a copy of the U.S. Constitution was buried to signify what some consider the death of the Constitution. The National Guard was called in on the 2nd of May to quell the rioting, and on the 3rd day of May, the ROTC building on campus was burned down by students. On the 4th day of May, a large protest began, and when some students threw rocks and encircled the National Guard shot into the crowd, killing 4 students, injuring 8, and paralyzing 1. Even today, no one is sure why the order to shoot into the crowd of students was given, and many blame the National Guard for murder. However, others defend the National Guard by saying it was self-defense. It is an ongoing debate. Here is a segment of the song "For Dead in Ohio," which is about the Kent State shooting, and it is written by Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young.
Tin soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. For dead in Ohio. Gotta get down to it. Soldiers are cutting us down. Should have been done long ago.
On March 22, 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment was ratified by the Senate, 6 months after it was passed in the House. The ERA affirmed the rights of women across the nation, guaranteeing that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by a state on account of sex.
Oh my God.
The 1970s can be defined by its many technological advancements, greater expression of self, and its step towards a more open society.